All right, everybody, welcome to another Game Dev Roundtable chat for Game Wisdom. This is going to be for May 4th, 2021. Each month, myself along with our panel here likes to get together and discuss a topic regarding the game industry and game design. And for this month, we are going to be discussing kind of the impact streaming and YouTuber, Twitch culture has had on what it means to make games today. So, as always, let us go around the table and kind of introduce ourselves. Jack is unfortunately still busy with school, but I believe he may be free for next month's roundtable. So, fingers crossed there. But to get the ball rolling, I'm of course Josh Placer from Game Wisdom, and I talk about game design industry topics, and I am currently a three-time author on design. I'll send it over to Tomo next.
Hi, everybody. My name is Tomo Moriwaki. I've been making games for 23 to 24 years. And my claim to fame is having been the creative director on Spider-Man 2. And the last 7 years, I co-founded a small development studio called Hyperkinetic Studios. And we have one internal game, and it is called Epic Tavern.
All right, over to Rami.
My name is Ramin Shokrizad. I'm a game neuroeconomist. I've been writing for Gama Sutra since 2012 on topics related to game design and game ethics. I was a meta designer for Project Spark, World of Tanks Blitz, World of Warships, Gods Unchained. Now I'm have a studio called Immersely. We're working on a massive multiplayer online game called Star Garden.
Okay.
And I'm Sharky Shark, also known as Jim Tickersley, and I run the Nexus Games studio, and we're currently making a game called Neon Continuum, which is a very exciting grid-based strategy CCG. And I don't really have any claim to fame. I am a new coming uprising indie, hopefully uprising, rather. And hopefully my claim to fame will be the current game I'm working on.
All right. But with everyone on here, each one of you, and I guess including myself being on YouTube, has certainly had to experience and understand what things have changed in terms of kind of gamer culture and just how people experience games these days with the rise of YouTube, Twitch, streamings, videos, let's plays, even kind of like the rise of more people being able to consume esports. I think could also be a factor in this, with Evo being streamed, yearly these days. So I guess the first question for the table here, with kind of let's start with streaming, because I think that's probably like the easier thing to get a hold of. Streaming has become a major point for when it means for people to play and consume games. But for each of you, I guess, do you factor in the fact that people are going to be probably consuming your game by just, proxy? And, like, what are your thoughts on that? And if anyone wants to start first, feel free to chime in.
I'll chime in. Yeah, I think that somewhere in the last 5 years, I think it starts to become pretty clear that you need to have some sort of streaming strategy. And if you don't think about it at all, you might be leaving some really easy improvements on the table. Obviously, your player base is going to consider it from that perspective. In many cases, that'll be the first time they see it if they watch someone else playing it or something. And so if you're not trying to at least do a little bit of optimizing, then it's probably there's an inefficiency to not considering it. With respect to Epic Tavern, we were certainly just at least gaming out the scenarios of what it would look like and what a potential streamer would be doing or saying while streaming the game. And it was a fairly streamer-friendly experience. Lots of fun opportunities to have the streamer kind of read the book to their kids, so to speak, while playing the game. And we leaned into it, and where we were doing a lot of talking to people that were more into it than we were, because we're a bunch of old game devs, or at least we were back then, and that we weren't as we didn't have any fluency in the culture, and so we learned a lot in that period of time.
I think you have to plan for it, because if you're not planning for it, then you're in one aspect you're planning to fail, because a failure to plan is a plan to fail. And so you have to plan for it in some way, whether it's, you're planning on using it as an arm of your marketing, whether you're planning on using it to add some kind of Twitch or whatever integration, whether you're planning on doing it just as, this part right here of this game would be inconvenient for somebody who's streaming. Is there a way that we can change this to make it more convenient or better for that, but without, interrupting or downgrading the experience, kind of thing? And there's many ways you can think about it, but in the end, if you don't plan for it in some way, then you're going to get caught off guard by it. And maybe you'll be caught off guard in a good way, maybe you'll be caught off guard in a bad way, but you'll have no control over it because you didn't plan for
it. Anything for you, Ramin?
I would say, I mean, I'm probably the least experienced person in this area, since I try to stay off of social media as much as possible. But I would say, as game companies have moved increasingly towards making, especially the AAA games, more movie quality games that make it easier for a person to watch the game either on a demo or through a stream. I think for the person playing those games themselves, that often real-time interaction has made the game perhaps more stressful. But this has created an opportunity for people to just watch other people doing the stressful part of the job, so they can just kind of kick back. And that in a sense makes it almost like an auto battler, because another human is playing the game for you, so you can just watch it vicariously. In a game like Loop Hero is probably, or any turn-based game, is probably not going to be nearly as much fun to watch as a stream. But I would think it would be a lot less stressful for the person to play in first person. So I would think the streaming probably benefits the AAA offerings the most, and maybe less for the other types of games. The trick is, how do you make a game that's both relaxing to play and enjoyable in first person, but still interesting enough that somebody would be interested in watching over their shoulder as they play it.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point. It's something that, like, for somebody like me who streams a lot of games and tries to show them to people, that I've certainly had a challenge with. Because I know, Char, you can attest to this with some of the games you watch me play and some of the games that you stream, that there is a challenge of this idea of quote-unquote stream-friendly games. Like, I can sit and play a game like a Dyson Sphere program, or what was one of the ones I just played? Like Anno 1800. I can sit and play that game for hours on end. I love playing it, but even I can just sense, like, the eyes rolling in the back of everyone's skulls when there are people watching me just sit there and go, okay, do I want to set my potato farm to 1.76% or 1.96% yield?
Yeah, it's a anything turn-based seems to have that issue. Well, not technically anything, but most things turn-based. Anything that is non-stressful, kind of thing, like turn-based kind of thing, like your tactical RPGs and all that, generally have that issue kind of thing. But the one thing that kind of doesn't have that is when you're on a timer, specifically CCGs, because CCGs are very turn-based, but, people will be like, they will, number one, be, if they know what they're going to do, they're going to be playing the cards really fast kind of thing. If they don't know what they can do, then you can almost feel that stress and pressure through the video kind of thing, the people watching it kind of thing. So like that's one of the weird exceptions to turn-based, and it's weird. But when you get action games, it also kind of varies on them, because like it seems not necessarily more intense, but the more flashy the action combat is, the kind of better it does on a stream. Like for example, like a Devil May Cry, where you're jumping on the enemy and using them around as a skateboard kind of thing, and just jumping off, gets a lot of attention in that kind of thing. Where if you're just running around slashing, then running around slashing, then running around slashing, not so much.
Yeah, and I would also like, in terms of what you were saying in terms of stress, I would also add in anything that has a competitive layer is very stream popular, because that right there is peak stress. That is peak tension for somebody to watch, and it's why I think a lot of what we could probably like consider, like the pre, heavy streaming era came from the esports side. People watching stuff like the World Cyber Games, StarCraft tournaments, Evo before it really blew up. That there is something inherently exciting about watching two people or watching somebody at like the height of their skill trying to play against somebody who's also at the height of their skill.
I think that there are game types that have an affinity for streaming, and those will do better, all things being equal, or that they'll perform generally well. But I do think that there's a whole kind of category of game that's really all about enabling the streamer themselves to kind of bring some entertainment to bear, right? And so for especially some of the more popular streamers out there, if a game creates space for that streamer to express themselves and to kind of bring their personality and sort of entertainment skills to bear, then that game has that's the new trick these days, is finding a way to make the streamer's job easier, right? Get them give them tools to somehow get themselves more popular, but through the vehicle of your interactive experience. Because like a turn-based game can be great as long as there's something really noteworthy to trigger, a funny bit of discussion around. Whereas Devil May Cry, there's performance involved there. Is if I'm not good enough at the game, then it's not necessarily interesting to watch me play. But if I am good, now it's super interesting. And if I'm like playing Destiny, but all I do is get killed over and over again and never hit anything, the people watching, I mean, they might find it comedy that I'm so bad, but eventually they'll get tired of watching me die.
Yeah, and I think, like, as you said, like, the game enabling the streamer or the person playing it to kind of, like, bring their own personality in, I think that has been a very big role of kind of what we've seen over, like, the last 5 years of some of the more popular games. Like, Darkest Dungeon, I think, would be a really good example of this. Like, Darkest Dungeon is a turn-based game. And from the outside, you would think this would be a horrible game to watch people play. Party on the left, or there you go, with my hands right. Party on the left, fights party on the right, repeat ad nauseum. But the game does so much to kind of allow people to bring their own personality in. You can name every character. I've done it. I know, like, pretty much anyone who streams Darkest Dungeon allows, they take names from the people watching or their fans. And of course, we can't forget the rage aspect of it. And I think, like, the whole, quote-unquote rage culture has really been given, like, new life with the rise of YouTube and Twitch.
It is funny. It never gets old to watch someone apparently and earnestly lose their shit and completely freak out, right? It's like this special moment. There's a product there, partly due to its rarity, I'm sure, because you're like, oh, where no one else is ever going to see that craziness. That specific craziness. Maybe if you're a rage case, you get to see it come out of a particular person rather frequently.
I'm still looking at how this affects like game design, and I'm realizing that the best games to stream are the ones that really don't have any progression in them, where the game resets after a certain after an event and you go back to zero. The games I tend to play, and the few games that I've gotten ultra competitive in, are ones where there's a strong metagame, and the metagame determines what you can do during the gameplay session. So, like for instance, Shattered Galaxy, you'd be engineering all the units in your stable, all the equipment they have, and you could come up with exotic combinations like I would, that would then come in and surprise a team that wouldn't expect that you could do that with that unit. So streaming that, I think, would be a lot of fun. The problem would be that then people would know what I'm up to, and that could hurt my competitiveness in the game. Similarly, if I was playing Ways of History, people would love to know all the tricks I play in that game, but then they know all the tricks I play in that game. They would also know like what my armies had and such, and or where they were going if I was showing players, and then I couldn't be competitive in that situation.
Yeah, and
stream sniping is a thing for sure.
Thank you. I was just about to say that.
What was that?
Stream sniping is a thing where people watch somebody stream to purposely get over on that person.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then the game I'm making now, Star Garden, I think it would be interesting to watch because we've got planned up to 900 unique creature types that you can unlock across 20 domains, and it's unlikely you would specialize in more than a few domains. So it might be fun to watch someone else streaming because they might have creatures that you haven't unlocked, or you're thinking whether you should go that way or this way. You want to know which domain you want to go for, so it'd be neat to see people streaming the different domains. But at the same time, there's tribe versus tribe battles, and if you knew what the other tribe had before you fought them, that could give you an advantage. But maybe that's not a problem because maybe the whole tribe has stuff, but the individual player just has a very small part of that tribe. So maybe you could stream from one player, and you know what one person out of 40 people in a tribe has, but you wouldn't know what the whole team had. So it might work out all right.
Well, something you could do is integrate a streamer mode that will allow them to basically put a proxy name over their real name while they're streaming, so that they can put their stream name while they're streaming, and then when they aren't streaming, they turn that off, and then it'll just be their regular player name. That way, nobody will know what they have because nobody will identify the two people as the same person.
Yeah, man, I think go ahead, Rami.
That might be especially handy, especially if you're playing your own game and the people know the developer's playing, and of course everyone's going to want to go after the developer. So if they're trying to figure out what account you have and they don't know, that would probably be perfect.
Also, Rami, I think you're just like a little bit low on my side. Would you be able to raise your volume maybe just like a little bit?
I'm going to try to do that on my iPad.
And while you're doing that, and I think there's suddenly a whole I don't think we have the time to get into it tonight, but there's suddenly a whole nother thing about security and protection for people who stream and do things along those lines. I think that's like another interesting aspect for what all this means.
Something about what Ramin was talking about, it got me thinking that there are different types of streams that I'll be interested in, right? So let's say I play some particular game. Let's say I'm playing a not a popular game like Steel Division 2. I mean, I'm not saying it's not popular. I don't mean to say that, but that it's not a game that's watched by maybe millions, right? And I have maybe a particular streamer that I like to watch entirely for educational reasons, right? That they've shown themselves to be very good at the game, and they put a lot of time into analyzing the game. So I'm always interested in hearing their insights. So I'm watching that kind of the way I might watch any kind of educational video. But then sometimes, let's say, and this isn't actually true, but let's say I played Steel Division 5 hours a day for a year. So Steel Division is trapped in my brain. I don't have a way. I don't think without it. And so when I want to unwind after playing the game, I find the streamer that is just funny and entertaining and chill, and I just kind of passively soak up kind of a softer version of what I've been, intently doing over the course of the day. And so that both those streamers are of interest to me, but one would be probably I'd watch for longer and I'd pay less attention to. And then the other, I'm like, there's a new episode or a video coming up, and I'm interested to hear what that person has to say, because as I puzzle over how to optimize my own behaviors in the game, it's real nice to find that I've come to trust this person's judgment about the game. And I think that there's obviously way more types of potential entertainment for any given game, and that if I'm enough into a particular game, I might view them all. I might have 2 streamers for X, 2 streamers for Y, 2 streamers for Z, 12 streamers for, A sub 1 or whatever.
Yeah, that reminds me of some of my own viewing habits, because I know that, not on streaming, but on YouTube, just a video, I watch a particular streamer or particular YouTuber that makes all kinds of videos on Oxygen Not Included, and he's always coming up with all these creative ways to solve problems, and all these different ways and different tactics and all this crazy stuff, and he's doing all kinds of weird and crazy stuff to solve these problems, and doing it efficiently, doing it non-efficiently, running these experiments to what would be the most efficient way, and at a certain point kind of thing, this gas is the most, important whenever you're trying to transfer heat from one place to another within this temperature range. But if you go above this temperature range, now you want to deal with more of this gas or this liquid kind of thing.
And I think Oxygen Not Included is also a really good point about this next question I have for everyone. That with kind of the rise of streaming and YouTube-based culture, we have seen certain genres really become elevated in these areas. Oxygen Not Included, Minecraft, anything that really allows a creative mode, something that you can just sit and watch somebody. They want to build, I don't know, London Bridge in Minecraft, or Big Ben, or pick any massive project, and they'll spend who knows how many hours, days, weeks, months doing it. You can watch somebody do that. It's almost like watching professional Lego makers, or people who just get really into that creative aspect. And
I can duck on that one on personal experience, because I used to stream that.
Yeah, and that kind of creative outlet, I think, leads me to this question that I want to get everyone's thoughts on, this idea that how much streaming and YouTube culture has affected what games are being made today, or maybe more specifically, what games are being popularized today. Because there was this whole discussion for the last 4 years that single player games are dying. Every game needs to be multiplayer. Every game must have social aspects, and you need to have Twitch integration, and everything must be allowed to set up for that. And you can't watch somebody play an 8-hour story-driven game.
I don't think that's true. I think that single-player games, I think all games have their places, kind of thing. I just think that AAA have motivations to make multiplayer, be the focus, because that's where other players provide the content, and they have to provide far, far less, so they can release a far more bare Skinner box to make money off of, but that's kind of their motivation. But at the same time, I mean, I rarely play multiplayer games, but I enjoy playing multiplayer games. Like when I play a multiplayer game, usually I play that game a lot, kind of thing. A lot. But when I play single player games, they're more, I play them until I either get done or tired of them, and then I move on to the next one, kind of thing. although there are exceptions to that, like oxygen not included and stuff where I got a lot of creative juices and or where I'm really stuck into it, like Loop Hero kind of thing like that. But like, that's a different topic of playtimes and whatnot. But I think that every game has their place. Every type of game has their place. I just think that, certain genres and such are less or more stream friendly or less or more YouTube friendly based off of what they are. Because like when it comes to traditional RPGs, and I'm talking about what a lot of people refer to as JRPGs, you generally don't see that stuff on streams. And when you do, you normally see they have like one or two viewers kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Unless it's this really popular streamer that is just, bowing over that game for a short run and then they're done kind of thing. Or maybe one playthrough and then they're done. And, you really don't see that. And, same thing goes with recorded YouTube videos. You really don't see that kind of thing. But when it comes to, you do see a lot of multiplayer and competitive games. And you also see a lot of rage games.
Mm-hmm.
But, I definitely don't want to see any rage games in the market. I can't prevent them from going out, but I do not like that kind of game. I would prefer to see other kinds of games. And not the biggest fan of multiplayer games. I am the biggest fan of select multiplayer games that I play a lot of, but only the select ones that I play a lot of.
And I think, again, like going back to the question about how much, streaming and YouTube has influenced how people think about and designing games, that that developers are always keeping an eye on, Getting Over It, Jump King, Pogo Stuck, and then, of course, going as far back or going a little bit further back with multiplayer games, Hearthstone, Gwent, Battlefield, whatever. And it is something I think developers are really trying to keep track of in terms of, this kind of like waves, these waves of interest in these games. And, as somebody, again, like for people who watch me, I typically try to ignore, whatever's the current hot topic. I still haven't played Fortnite or Minecraft here on the channel. Again, we still need to get Jack on for the anti-Fortnite chat, which may be next month, considering the whole Epic versus Apple discussion. We'll have to see on that. Mm-hmm. But, like, to what you just said, Shark, that a lot of the games that I play here, I know they're not massive. They're not going to be bringing in hundreds of thousands of viewers. But what we see on Twitch and YouTube, and I think what developers are really keeping an eye on, is when there are these waves, like Among Us probably being one of the biggest examples, that 1 month Among Us went from being nothing, the game was 6 feet under, to being one of the most played games. It's been featured on late night. AOC did a stream with other YouTubers or streamers, like in like a short span, like 3 or 4 months, that game came to life like a lightning bolt struck it, like Frankenstein's monster. And that people who are developing games are looking at this in terms of how do we get that lightning strike for our game.
Sadly, they're looking at it the wrong way because they're thinking that they made the game and lightning struck, and it is like, no, they made the game. The game died horribly. Mm-hmm. 2 years later, the developer was walking out in the street. They got struck by lightning 3 times. Then they went into a gas station. They picked up a lotto ticket. They won $1 million. They walked home and they got struck by lightning 3 more times. And then they got home, and that's how lucky they got. And when they got home, the game was succeeding. Mm-hmm. That's you got to be that lucky. If you could accomplish that kind of luck, then you go for it. At that point, don't go for it 2 years later. Go for that right when you launch. Mm-hmm. Go for that walk right when you launch.
But in the case of Among Us, right, that when they initially launched the game, the audience wasn't in the same place, right, mm-hmm. and that 2 years later, some factors came together to create the opportunity. I don't know exactly what the conditions were that whatever they did to take advantage of that opportunity. But obviously, we all know that Among Us got big for a period of time, and that it's not really as big as it used to be, right? And having such a bright moment is, I mean, I'm okay with that. And now the question then becomes, how do you change your approach to creating experiences to try to accommodate that possibility? And it's like for myself, I would say 10 years ago, it was not something that was considered in the conceptual development process. I didn't think, what was it like to watch someone else play this game? That just never came up. In fact, if anything, I had a lot of contempt for the idea, and I was a little bit of an old man shaking my fist at the emerging idea itself. But fast forward 10 years later, and now I recognize it for what it can be, in that if you have a good path for someone to express themselves through your game, and God forbid this person has a whole bunch of people that like watching them do stuff, you have this enormous opportunity to increase your reach. So at just a very fundamental financial level, that's worth thinking about. But I think there's a whole lot more to it, right? The whole experiential aspect of what is it like to watch someone else play this game. One of the things 10 years ago I wouldn't be thinking about, or wasn't like an active concern of mine, is that there's this way for a person to enjoy something that is lower in intensity than playing the thing. And that might drive my decisions for how I spend my time. So I'm generally not much of a stream watcher the same way that many that I know are. But those that I know who are, they find, one, like when we talk about Minecraft and why you watch a bunch of streams on Minecraft, is you played it a lot. So all the rules of Minecraft are in your head and they're running in circles. And if anything, watching someone casually play Minecraft lets you sort of unwind those circles that you kind of wound up too tight while playing so much. And so if anything, it's almost like it can have like a therapeutic like impact. So let's say I made a game and really all I want to do is wind you up too tight. I'd still want it to be good for streaming so that you could unwind it some, and then you could dive back in and wind yourself up again. And I think when it comes to multiplayer shooters, you see a little bit of that, right? Where people will watch streams and laugh it up and not have to get frustrated and crazy. And then they'll jump right back into playing multiplayer until they're like, grinding off like a tenth of a millimeter of their teeth while they huck their controller at the television shit.
The thumbnail I put together, I think, that kind of expression.
Totally.
Yeah, I want to just nail down more on like how streaming here affects game design decisions. Since that's what I do. I spend all my time trying to do game design. I was thinking how a good example might be World of Tanks. You're all familiar with World of Tanks, I assume. World of Tanks came out 10 years ago, and I don't know if it was how much they had really concerned themselves with making it like an esports game, because there were some elements in the original game like gold rounds that made it inappropriate in my mind for esports, because they had those pay to win elements, which I successfully removed in World of Warships. But when you get killed in a round, 15 on 15 players, you basically can watch the rest of the round play out, but you're out. This created a real problem, especially if streaming got more popular, because the person streaming, if they want to make their game exciting, they want to get right into action early, and they're likely to get killed out early. And then what are they showing? Just other players fighting their round? That's not very glamorous. So a lot of times players would then just drop out of the round instead of waiting to see how it finished and jump into the queue to get into another battle. The problem with this is when people drop out, it's not as good for the players for the round. It's created some problems for us, especially people dropping out before, like, just because as soon as they saw that their side was going to lose, they would drop out, and it's created a lot of problems. So we were considering internally, well, should we solve this the same way you do in first-person shooters, meaning you would just magically resurrect right in the middle of battle and go right into it. So it ends at a certain amount of time, and you might have gotten killed 8 or 10 times, but it doesn't matter. You're always magically restored, which I have other issues with because it's an unrealistic portrayal of battle, but that's a whole other conversation. But we decided we couldn't really like do that practically in World of Tanks or any of the games that came after that. So we didn't. But you can see how that would be a problem for streaming. And there's a lot of pressure to make a less realistic way of doing a battle where you just magically re-enter it just so that people can keep streaming it.
Yeah. Romy, I have 18,000 battles in World of Tanks.
You go, boy.
I haven't played in a long time, but back then, that was where I left it.
Brittany asked a question about Twitch drops.
Yeah.
And I'm unsure exactly what Twitch drops is. Do any of you guys know what Twitch drops are?
I did look it up. Yeah, go ahead.
Your Amazon Prime account comes with free stuff for your games, basically. Sometimes they just flat out give you games. It's like the coolest free thing. Well, maybe it's not the coolest free thing ever, but it's a pretty cool free thing. And so like in the context of World of Tanks, I'll get like a new tank crew member that has more skills, or if it's in Destiny, you'll get like an exotic weapon that you should have got a year ago, or if it's I don't think I've seen anything for World of Warcraft, but there was a monthly Dauntless Amazon Prime drop or Twitch Prime drop that would give you a decent amount of in-game resources, and same with Warframe. Okay, well, those are all the games that I played that I gave a crap about the Prime drops, and it was very nice. I enjoyed it quite a bit. It reinforces my relationship with Twitch. It makes me happy that I'm an Amazon Prime member. You can also get this advantage if you become Twitch Prime through Twitch. But yeah, it's basically just incentivized loot.
Just a DLC, basically.
Yeah, and looking it up on Twitch, like the game needs to obviously be integrated for it. Like you can't just be like, I'm watching somebody play Tetris and I get amazing new skin for a Warframe or something. And
I never watch anything. Right, I watch very rarely. I get it because of being a Prime member.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a perk for giving Bezos money.
Well, when I was reading that, I was thinking he was referring to like Twitch integration kind of thing. Which
that's totally it is ultimately separate, and that's a whole other world of interesting stuff, right? That this idea where the Twitch audience can participate in your play experience.
Oh yes,
which beyond just naming your characters.
Yeah, which I absolutely love that. I made a game jam game based on that kind of thing.
Nice,
and I loved it. But the weakness to that is that you're limiting your audience to Twitch users. So they have to both be a Twitch user and be interested in your game, and it really hurts the market kind of thing, your possible market.
Well, the developer standpoint on that, though, is that you can identify a certain percentage of bandwidth. It could be very, very small, and then try to see what with that bandwidth you can do to improve the Twitch experience, knowing that there's a lot of promotional benefits to a game that's easy or nice to stream. I think in the context of like Epic Tavern, we allowed you to rename characters. That was what's funny is that feature was implemented while streaming development on Twitch, and it wasn't too hard. We didn't spend a lot of our bandwidth. We've spent more thinking bandwidth than we have actual engineering bandwidth for Twitch-related features, and it it helped out a bit. It's something, and it's just a vehicle through which we explore the idea of what is your game like when other people watch it played by other people.
Yeah, definitely anything that can add to it is good, but the question is you need to be wary about doing anything that makes it dependent on a platform like Twitch. There's because like I've seen some of these games that are, I wouldn't say unplayable, but they're not fun if you're not or the person you're watching is not actively playing it, kind of thing.
Yeah. And as a quick time check, it's about 7:40 my time. I know, Tomo, you have to get going in probably about, what would you say, like 25, 30 minutes, thereabout?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
All right. But, like, speaking about... anything else,
I was just thinking of a dark side thing that I hadn't considered when I wrote this paper back in 2017. I wrote a paper called "I'm Dying to Play." Mm-hmm. I talked about how somebody was playing World of Tanks on Twitch and was streaming, and because of frictional losses, you want to stream as long as possible, because if somebody's looking to watch you and you're not on, they're going to go somewhere else. But if you're on, and then it's much easier for people to catch you, see what you're doing, stay in and watch you. So this player decided that they were going to play World of Tanks for 24 hours straight. Now, I played like this before. I was one of the top 100 players in the world to reach the top level of World of Warcraft when it came out by playing 22 hours a day, 8 days in a row. But I wouldn't recommend that. I mean, it's physically punishing to try to play that long in a very high stress game without sleeping. And this guy made some mistakes, which I documented in the paper. For instance, he was using stimulants like coffee and cigarettes. And if you can't do it without the stimulants, then by using the stimulants, you can really do a lot of harm. And in this case, this player literally died. He didn't make it to 24 hours. He got to maybe like 22, like I've done it a number of times. And he got up out of his chair, took a few steps, and died right off the camera. And they're like, "Is he coming back? Is he coming back?" And they didn't know he was right off the camera dying. And I was just thinking that, the way you allow a person to play a high stress game for an extended period of time is you mix it with a metagame so that they have a chance to come down between the gameplay bouts. So like in World of Tanks, that would be you go to your garage and you maybe tinker with your tank or switch to a different tank, or you do something creative or thought-provoking, or that doesn't involve you having to respond to other players. And then when you feel like you're ready, you've calmed down enough, you go on to your next battle. But on Twitch, if you're trying to keep your people viewed on your action, and if you slow down enough, people might get bored. So I imagine there's going to be a lot of pressure to not only play longer than you should be, but also play more intensely than you should be.
I've seen people playing card games that would, a lot of their stream would actually be stopping and building decks, kind of thing.
Well, I mean, that's good, but I think there's a lot of pressure for like on this person to keep the action as high as possible, so they can get their numbers as high as possible, so they can get their revenue as high as possible. And in that situation, then you can have unfortunate events like this, where this guy pushed himself too hard, but there was financial pressure to push himself that hard.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good segue into this question I want to ask everyone, or this topic I want to bring up for the table. And I think, considering our time, this may be the last one for me, and if we still have a little bit of time after, we'll see if anyone else has anything. And for the chat watching, if you have any questions for us, this will be officially last call for it. But to build on what Ramin was just saying, kind of going back to what Tomo said earlier about watching somebody as kind of a almost like a pressure valve or release valve, that this has been, I think, another very big aspect of this rise of YouTuber and Twitch culture, and what it means to look at games being played. Like, horror, I think, is probably one of the biggest examples of benefiting from the rise of YouTuber and streaming culture. That a lot of people don't want to play a game where, any second they're going to get, scared out of their seat, start having chest pains. But if they can watch somebody like Markiplier play Five Nights at Freddy's or PewDiePie or, any one of the major names that are like on stream, what was that, Phantasmophobia, wherever it's called, and those like kind of co-op horror games, it then turns into this experience of you're just watching a horror movie essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And with this idea of, if Jack was here, I'm sure he would love this term as well, the whole influencer aspect of what it means to watch people play these games. And I just want to get everybody's thoughts on, this idea that trying to reach this market really is no longer about you putting an ad up on YouTube or, really dating myself, an advertisement in a magazine. But it's reaching out to somebody who plays these games for a living. I know, Shark, for yourself, I'm sure you've correlated or you put together several lists of big name deck building and CCG streamers. So I'm sure you're going to be reaching out to for Neon Continuum.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to just give everyone a chance to go around and kind of like your thoughts on, the power of influencers and what it means for making a game these days. And anyone feel free to start.
Sure. Every year that goes by, the impact of influencers on the potential reach for any idea, honestly, is going up. In a very fundamental level, reach is always going to be one of the most important pieces of the math puzzle that lead to success. And so there's this vehicle through which many people can be contacted. It's unreasonable for us to turn our backs on that. It's an opportunity of significant value. And so spending the cycles to understand what those influencers are doing and why they're successful and how you can help them, in a sort of like what's the word when species help each other, symbiotic relationship, where the more I can understand how an influencer functions and what it does just in the world in general, which, at its core is ultimately like a game of popularity, the same way kind of a lot of our entertainment is kind of wrapped around, at least when it's connected to celebrity. But understanding how to get, how to become a YouTube sensation, I may not understand it. I by no means understand how to do it myself, but the more I understand about how those that are successful got there, the better I can and more informed my choices are about the changes I choose to make about the work I do, so as to kind of up my odds going forward. Does that answer your question, or did I get a bit too meta there?
It's hard to tell with this kind of topic. But yeah, I do.
I know that you influencers are very, very important because in the end they are an extension of your marketing department. They are getting you exposure. There's good exposure and there's bad exposure. So you got to be careful on how things go. So you want to provide the best experiences because ideally you don't want somebody playing a game saying that they hate the game, unless they're playing a rage game, in which case that's all you want. You want them raging constantly and telling them that they hate the game, and then they sit there and play it straight for 6 hours, kind of thing. Raging the whole entire time. But that aside, I mean, you don't want rage coming from a non-rage game in general, kind of thing. I mean, you can have frustration and the occasional rage for not because of the game, but because they lost, because they were not good enough to beat their multiplayer opponent or whatever kind of thing. But you don't want them to, rage because some mechanic you made in there was really unfair. And the only way you could, do this is basically be a professional Kaizo player and be able to, accurately in just a heartbeat platform from this one platform to this platform to this platform to this platform that are all smaller than your character in less than 1 second. And you've got to do it all in succession, and that kind of thing you don't want in general in there, because you don't want your you don't want your streamers bashing your game, basically, unless the game is meant to be bashed, like a rage game.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point of what also Brittany just said, that there's a lot of streamers, as we've said, like, the rise of streaming and streamer culture, that's, I think, like another 2-hour discussion, easily. And this idea that the influencer, as by their title there, the name there, has or thinks they have influence over the game. And we've seen this, and we've seen examples of it, like, any game that has like either a very strong or very fervent fan base, or you have like professional level players who stream the game and talk about it, that they will, call out developers. They may say, that, why is the developer doing this stupid thing, and all manner of things. And I've tried watching a few like WoW streamers who like talk about the game while they're playing it, and it's such a strange idea of somebody who's like trying to, I guess, quarterback game design while playing the game and yelling about it.
Well, I mean, I think it's a natural place for the streamer to go, right? They may not have any expertise, and maybe they're just kind of, off the cuff, kind of trying to imagine a perspective that's building the game. But it seems like a natural place to kind of get into the weeds about, if I can make a good show of it, talking about what the game could be or should be might be very entertaining for my audience. I don't have to be right.
I'm kind of seeing at least there's a fifth group I don't want to get into today, but I'm seeing these streamers as being in like 4 groups. You might have a streamer that's showing you how great they are at a fast action game, but the thing is, their reflexes are so fast that they're able to do stuff faster than they can explain what they did. So it's just kind of, you're watching it, but it's not really all that educational. You've got another group that might be playing a single player narrative game, and they're walking through this story of the game with you, which I think is fascinating to watch, and could be a replacement for me purchasing the game, because I'm basically having the experience while someone else is hitting the keys. That's good for the viewer, but maybe not good for the developer, because then they don't have to buy your game. They've already done it. And then you've got the player that might be having the expert multiplayer game experience. This person's probably been playing this game for a long time to generate that expertise. And that's a good example. That was when I was when I designed certain player friendly things into the models for like World of Tanks Blitz or World of Warships, and then I left and I was replaced by people that didn't have the same emphasis. They tried to dark side some of my models, and as soon as that happened, you had like a dozen of their top streamers all just completely attack wargaming online for these changes that they were able to, that may have been subtle, but weren't subtle to these experts. And they actually had to revert and go back to my original design, and it basically left my designs as I originally designed them because they're afraid to mess with them now. I think that's a great thing for defending the players, and I love when the players are able to stand up for their game because they understand it that well, even if they don't understand the politics behind the scene that are guiding that. And then you have this fourth group, which I see as like the industry watchers, and to them it's all about the politics. So when somebody leaves a company that's a key person, they'll report about it, or somebody's salary gets cut in half, like the CEO of Activision recently. They report about that because it gives you a hint as to what's coming or what's been happening that they're not telling you. And I find it interesting to watch all the dirt. I think when you watch these, when you listen to these watchers and they explain what's going on, you start to think, AAA might really be in trouble because all the trends that they're reporting, which you need to have a little bit more long-term vision of the industry, are fairly consistently negative. And I mean, I watched a stream about this. One person was talking about the head of this one major studio that you all know, which I'm not going to name. I bashed him at like the 2003 E3 as kind of a charlatan in front of a bunch of other journalists back when I was journalist, and he's still the head of this huge studio. And this guy was just going through like 20 years of history of this guy, all the lies that this guy had been saying, and catching him in all of them. And it was really fascinating to watch because I don't pay that much attention to these individual developers. Now that I'm not a journalist, but this guy has. So it was really fascinating to see this type of scrutiny and keeping our developers more honest. Though I'm not really sure we have that much control over their honesty, though. Like with that Reddit attack on Star Wars Battlefront 2, I mean, that was an example of the streamers activating the masses and having them react to a product in a way that we really hadn't seen before, and I think we're going to see a lot more in the future.
Yeah, the whole idea of like review bombing games being like another example of this. And I do remember, I think there was like a big name, I think World Tank streamer or YouTuber who got like, I forget if he got banned or, he got pressured by wargaming, and he made like this whole thing about it. And like it basically caused like a small revolt against wargaming for like a little bit of time. But I forget like the name of the person who it happened to.
Yeah, I want to hit on the little topic there. I don't want to go into depth because we haven't got time.
Yeah.
On the review bar, because for the most part, I don't think it's an issue. For the most part. Because the most part, people have done bad things to the game. Therefore, somebody's encouraging people who already play the game to realize that bad thing and then revolt against it. And that's not bad. That's a very good thing. That's a very positive thing. However, the bad side, which does happen, but it happens far less often, is when there's no reason, there's no cause, there's no nothing. It's just, somebody directing people to do this thing for no reason at all, other than maybe some kind of personal vendetta or something like that. And I have been on the other end of that, and that was not pleasant.
Yep. And I know we are like right at the end of time here, so I think Soren's comment is a great one to end on, because he asked, does this actually impact sales? Like, why should developers, consider this? And I think that's a great way to end this discussion on. So I guess for my thoughts, that I think what everyone has said tonight, that streaming and YouTuber culture, this idea of being able to experience a game without playing it, I think does mean a lot for people, whether it's being able to experience a game that they'll never have a chance at playing, something like a rage game, a horror game, super highly difficult game, or if it's being able to experience it through the lens of their favorite personality. There are people who've watched, Northern Lion, Markiplier, Bear Taffy, whatever, play these games. Like, they may have no interest in these games whatsoever, but they just want to see how the person reacts to it. And on the subject of whether or not this leads to sales, I think that is very hard to measure. Again, Among Us being that principal, outlier to this, and nobody thought that it was going to blow up like this. But I think to what you said earlier, Shark, that it becomes a part of your marketing, I think is a huge role here. That you never know, and this is something that I've experienced myself, you never know who is going to, light that fire for people to find out about you. I've had people find my videos. I've had fans show up from, something that I made 5 years ago. And all of a sudden, that person can become a lifelong fan, or maybe a contact for, a business venture or whatever. And you never know unless you have those options out there for people to find and kind of interact with you. And I think that's kind of where streaming and YouTube kind of become a factor for game developers.
Yeah, I would say that, I wouldn't say that streaming and video influencers necessarily make more sales, but I would say that it's pretty safe beyond a reasonable doubt that they do affect sales. Mm-hmm. Whether it's in a positive light or a negative light or a nil light. Because if you go out there to a bunch of influencers and you ask them to stream your game and they refuse, then obviously there's a nil there, but they're affecting you through the meal because they're not allowing you to stream it, or them to stream it. They're not going to stream it for you, kind of thing, or make a video on it. Where on the other hand, if they're making a video for it, there's the thing is, is this a game that is going to, when they stream it, is it going to encourage people to buy it, or is it going to encourage them to only experience it through the stream and that's it? And part of that is based off of the personal taste of the person, as well as the way the game is designed. And when you have these games that are all about a emotional, experience kind of thing, story and whatnot, and that's the main or the only part to it, it's a lot harder to translate that into sales, and it's a lot easier to translate that into loss of sales kind of thing. But in games that are like competitive kind of thing, that's a place where it's really easy to translate into more sales. And again, it depends on the personal taste of the viewer, as well as the game that you designed, and not only the genre of the design, but how you designed it. Because you could have a story-based tactical RPG that would perform, in a way that would increase sales, and you could have one that would decrease sales based off of the viewing. And not all of that is quality. We're assuming that both of them are the same quality kind of thing. Then it's still, different designs go different directions kind of thing, depending on how they shape their designs. And Brittany, pointed out that free-to-play games, free-to-play games, live services, are games that always have renewing content. With always renewing content, there's always something new to see, meaning that streamers can stream it repeatedly over a long time rather than just, a 20-hour game where they stream it 20 hours, they beat it. There's nothing more for them to do. They can't continue. And that's where your exposure ends, where with a live service, they can keep on going endlessly, basically. And you can basically have endless exposure from that one person kind of thing. So, and also, the thing about free to play is barrier of entry. People ain't got to pay $15 to get into the game. They can just go in there, press a button, and they got it.
And I will also add like gacha-based games, like going back to we were saying about being able to experience a game through another person. There are a lot of people who will watch streamers who will open up loot boxes and gachas and play all manner of mobile games, and they're never going to spend that money, but they can watch somebody else blow through it in like 20 minutes.
Yeah, I know the one and only time I streamed, I think it was Hearthstone, somebody asked me to open some loot boxes, and I was like, yeah, I ain't got the money. And it wasn't long, and they left. I was like, yeah, I ain't blowing all my money on that.
Yeah. I guess very quickly, Ramin, Tomo, do you have anything you want to say regarding this?
Just that kind of in connection to something that Brittany and Soren were talking about, is that you don't have to engage in this piece of the game industry's function, right? You don't have to be a streamer. You don't have to make a game that is good for streaming. You can just turn your back on it altogether. And there are plenty of developers that do that. And there are plenty of types of games that are so ill-suited to streaming that they really don't have much of an option. The best way to look at it is that for some games, it is an opportunity because there's a lot of streaming that's going on. And obviously the number of people that would spend their time watching other people play games 20 years ago was nobody. And today it's one of the biggest, basically, television channels on earth. And so, it's like, are you going to get with that program or not? And it's not like you have to, but that means you're not going to get access to the potential benefits. And if it continues to grow, that might seem inefficient. That said, sometimes running away from the mainstream is exactly the right call.
I would say that with limited content games, if the player can watch it and basically have the experience without buying the game. Then you end up with a substitution effect where they watched it instead of buying it, and that's bad for the developer.
Yep.
In unlimited content games, which like games with a lot of replayability, or MMOs, and as you know, I only make MMOs, partly for this reason. That's not really an issue. But there are other issues that come up, like if your gameplay is like very flashy and has a tremendous amount of sounds and things that might be stressful for the player, but it would appeal to the viewer. That's easy to transmit through a stream. But there's some other things, like what if you have a really long, you have that rare MMO, like what we're trying to build at Star Garden, where we're telling a story over 2 years, and you can't do that in a 1 hour Twitch stream. That's like trying to watch climate change in real time during a stream. You just can't do it. But the other thing that we're really trying to push in Star Garden that I don't really understand how that's going to come across in streaming or not is the social interaction. We're trying to make a very hyper social game with very low toxicity. And I think that might make a lot of streamers want to play our game, I'm not really sure how well they're going to be able to communicate the social interactions they're having during the game, since that's not visual.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And to what Brittany said, I have bought a lot of games, single player games, from watching someone else play. Specifically, Josh here, I have watched him play mini games, and it's like, yes, I really like where that game is going. I'm buying it right now. I'm buying it in the middle of the stream, or I'm buying it right after, kind of thing.
Yeah, and I think to build what Ramin was saying about what kind of content can drive somebody to play, like roguelikes or action roguelikes, I think have become very popular. By that virtue of that, it is a fresh experience each time you play it. So it kind of lends itself really well for streaming when you know that, somebody can stream 100 Days of Spelunky or Binding of Isaac or Dead Cells, and they'll have legitimately 100 different playthroughs of content to show off for a stream or a YouTube video.
Mm-hmm.
But I know we are knocking on time here, so we're gonna wrap things up for our roundtable as always. I'm gonna give everybody a chance to go around and plug social media, work they're on, anything along those lines. So we'll go in reverse order. So we'll start with Shark this time and then work our way around.
All right. So you can follow me on YouTube at the link down in the description. You can also see my Discord and Twitter down there. And you can come follow the Discord and check out the game I'm currently working on, Neon Continuum, where we play it once a week at our dev chats. And it's a very interesting sci-fi themed, with a core of cyberpunk strategy grid-based card game, CCG. One of the live services.
All right, and Rami?
I'm building a new, what I call a hyper-social MMO called Star Garden. We're starting our fundraise and our prototype build this month. It's very exciting. The idea with the hyper-social game is that the emphasis is on building community. In fact, building community in the place you live in using geolocation, so that you can actually build community that can transcend the game and also move into real space.
Hyperkinetic Studios is working on internal game called Epic Tavern. It's available currently on Steam Early Access, and it's a game about running a tavern set in a fantasy world. And the patrons that come to the tavern that you serve drinks to are potentially the great heroes of the land, and you get to kind of manage the creation of their backstory as you make your way towards completing the larger story arcs that are in place.
All right, and of course, if you're watching this on Game Wisdom, thank you so much. If you're new, do liking, subscribing, hit all those buttons that people tell you keep doing. I am on Twitter at GWBicer. You'll find links to all my books, Discord, and all that down in the description as well. And if you are a developer wanting us to cover your game or want to come on for a chat, please get in touch. But With that said, I'd like to thank our roundtable here. Again, I'm hoping Jack will be free for next month, because it sounds like we'll probably be talking about the Epic versus Apple lawsuit and what that means for games. I'm sure that's going to be a very fascinating discussion. And as always, come back for daily discussions on game design here and on game wisdom, where we are in science of games. So thank you everybody for attending, and we'll be chatting again sometime next month for our next roundtable.
See ya.
Bye, guys. Thank you.
Take care.
For having me.
Bye.